So when we first moved out here, we wanted to find the true story of how Chicken Dinner Road got its name. Because we talked to all the neighbors and they each had a different story. And in some cases, those stories are fighting words, if you will. And so we have to be very careful. I remember the very first day that we opened was September 9th, 2010. And we didn't even have our tasting room yet. We did our first tasting out on our patio. And lo and behold, two neighbors came by and they each grabbed the Chicken Dinner White because we only had 2 wines to taste. And they each read the story and they were looking at each other and one said, "That's not right. It's this way." And the other one said, "No, that's not right. It's this way." And so legend and lore created an environment of discussion. And so I made sure that prior to that I'd actually got the true scoop. And the true scoop is that a lady by the name of Mrs. Laura Lamb, she lived in the house just catty corner from our vineyard. And she was a woman of means back in that time. She was a housewife. Her husband was a farmer, not unlike what you might find on Chicken Dinner Road today. And she was tired of her lot in life. Because Greg had explained early in the 1900s that the roads out here were in very poor array. They were dusty, they were dirty, and bumpy, and she was done with that. And so she invited the first-term governor by the name of C. Ben Ross to come and enjoy a chicken dinner at her home. Now the governor, a bit naive, thought, well, this is what governors do, and I'm so excited that one of my constituents wants to meet me. And so he and his entourage headed out what we call Sunny Slope Road, or Highway 55. And Mrs. Lamb had sent her husband Morris to the end of the road to make a sign that said "Chicken Dinner This Way." So the sign's out, the governor shows up, and she presents this amazing chicken dinner. No doubt that it was very local at the time, coming from her garden and from maybe even her chicken coop. And they had a wonderful evening. And there was somewhat of a pause in the evening as Mrs. Lamb said, "Oh, Governor, I have prepared for you a beautiful apple pie from my apples from my orchard. Would you like some?" The governor's like, "Yes, I'd like some." She said, "Maybe you could help me with a little problem that I have. You see, the road here is dusty and dirty and rutted, and it's horrible to ride on, and it's even worse in my house because all the wind blows and all the dust comes into my home." Well, at this point, the governor knows that he may have been the chicken that got cooked that night because he realizes that he's in a spot. And he says to Mrs. Lamb, he says, "Well, what is it that you need help with, Mrs. Lamb?" And she says, "Well, if you could just help me get my road oiled. I just really need your help in that. Would you mind? And I'll be happy to serve this apple pie." The governor knows he has 2 choices. Go home, not have the pie, or he can stay, enjoy the pie. And what's one little road in Canyon County gonna hurt? Nobody's gonna know. So the governor helps Mrs. Lamb. Her road gets oiled. He seeks re-election, and by the way, I'm not sure that he always had the best of motives because he was not re-elected, and all the neighbors around the area were outraged because their roads didn't get oiled. And so the neighbors on Malt got in cahoots with the neighbors on Pride Lane, and on Halloween night, they came out and whitewashed Mrs. Lamb's black road and wrote "Winner, winner, chicken dinner." And Mrs. Lamb was mad as a wet hen. And that's how Chicken Dinner Road got its name.